Ah, yes. The first episode of the Popcast that isn't going to start with me coughing and hacking into the microphone. Excuse me. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Popcast. Whenever you are listening to this, whether it be while you're waiting for your power to come back on from the storm last week, waiting for patch notes to be dropped, trying to argue with your friends how a chicken could possibly come before an egg, whatever you're doing, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen to this, unless I don't. A quick shout out to my friend Carrot, who suggested that I start posting these onto YouTube. So after these streams are done on Twitch, I'm now going to export them to my YouTube channel, which is 25 Popgun, the exact opposite of my Twitch name, which is Popgun25. Just so that I can add more confusion to both you and me. But ultimately, I was convinced that if I wanted more people to listen to this, the best thing to do is to move things to YouTube as well. So, if you're watching this on Twitch, VOD, and you're like, I don't really like going to Twitch. I'd rather listen to this man and his sexy voice on YouTube. Well, you can do that now. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, well, you obviously have already found it. What are you doing listening to me right now? Talk about it for. Some features I do need to update before next week Popcast. I need to get the chat on the actual stream itself, because if you are watching this on YouTube, you are going to be kind of missing the chat. So next time, I will make sure to figure out how to get the chat actually on the stream, and maybe update my overlay so it doesn't look so put together at the last second, because I kind of did. But you know what? It's and I've kind of tinkered with how I want to do the overlay on this. I don't want it to be too focused with too much stuff going on the actual screen itself. I've thought about having my webcam on just so you can kind of see me stare into the microphone and my notes at the same time. And I'm not opposed to showing my face. If you watch any other casual stream I do that's not Popcast related, I usually have my webcam on, especially for tournaments. But I don't know. I'll adjust it for a little bit. So if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm not going to go out of my way to be like, Bland Cube said, "Hello, Dad," and Ethereal _09 said zero slant, which I believe is a wave. Or, Carrot Live said poogers as well. But if I do kind of comment on something, I'll try to read the comment or the chat message out loud so that it at least makes somewhat sense if you don't see the chat, and instead of me just rambling like I am right now. And if you want to watch any of my past Popcasts, they are all three previous episodes are already up on YouTube. Last week we talked about Inkstorm 8 as it relates to the lower level community, and it did an interview with Carbine of Bread Gang. Also, thank you for the follow, Omega. I'm assuming that is the Omega of Splat or Swim, and I'm assuming you're here because you know I'm going to be talking about you guys a lot today. LOZ. So yeah, I already lost my train of thought, which is fine. I'm not going to be interviewing anybody today. I did have some people reach out to me who would like to be on the show, and I would like to get them in and do interviews with teams when I feel like it's appropriate. Last week, there wasn't much to actually talk about as far as this podcast is concerned. So I did bring in the captain of Bread Gang, and we talked to him and got his perspective on his team and things in general. But But this week, I feel like I got a lot to talk about, which is surprising, considering all I really have to talk about is one tournament that had 16 teams in it. But it was such a fantastic tournament, and so many things happened in it that I can just ramble for days. But as we find more weekends where not a lot is going on that kind of is relevant to what the theme of this Popcast is supposed to be about, we'll find some more people to bring in and talk to them and learn more about some of the teams that are in the Div 8 to Div 5 range, as long as they are still in the Div 8 to Div 5 range, which whenever the next Ludi season comes out, a lot of these teams are going to be too good to be discussed at this point. So today, we're just going to recap a little Squid League, but before we get into that, an announcement was made today. A very interesting announcement. We have our second NA Open coming out in the past, 2 months now? 3 months? The last one was in June, I believe. In the past, it had been, we'd get one in June, and we would get one in January or February. We'd get one in winter, and we'd get one in the summer. Now we're getting one basically every other month. And no, I'm not talking about the Turf War. That doesn't count. Nintendo, cool. Thanks for giving us a Turf War tourney. We don't care. But these ranked, these actual legit tournaments, that's awesome that you guys are giving us this. Now, there are some issues with this tournament. No surprise. It's a single elim. If you watched the Popcast last week, you know how I feel about single elim tournaments, which is fine, though. It's fine. How are you supposed to do a tournament that gets like 400 teams? You got to do single elim. You can't. There's no other way you could do it. You could probably do speed ladder, but do you honestly believe we could get 300 casual teams to figure out how a speed ladder works? That, not to talk down to them, but I mean, most people who signed up for the Inc Academy speed ladder had no idea how that worked, especially with teams counterpicking maps that are illegal. Long wait times in this tournament. Long wait times, especially if you are an established team and you get fed a bunch of casuals in the first 3 or 4 rounds, and you just KO them and you sweep them out. And then you got to wait for the other side of the bracket to catch up. Last time, my team won our first 3 matches, all of which were KOs. Then we had to wait an hour for things to catch up to us, and that sucked. And I know we weren't the only team to do that. I know other teams were experiencing something even longer than what we had to go through. This tournament usually just kind of drops out of nowhere as well. And when it does, it might take up a slot of a tournament that was already kind of established. I don't know. Now, this tournament is September the 6th, I believe. Yes, it's September the 6th. So I don't think that really conflicts with anything. It's on a Sunday. Maybe that was their logic for that. And thank you for the follow. A muffin, I guess. They didn't teach us English where I grew up, which was Kentucky. So actually, me saying it pushes back other tourneys doesn't really affect that Sunday one, because that Sunday slot it's going for is actually pretty good. The prizes for this tournament. And thank you for the subscription, Z. And that what you just gave me is better than any prize that could be won from this tournament. It is the same prize that was in the last tournament. You win a digital copy of ARMS, Mario Tennis, and Smash Brothers. What? Well, I mean, it doesn't really. The prize could be anything. It's going to FT Win. The only real controversy here is FT Win going to sign up again, knowing that if they win the whole tournament, what they get is something they already got last time. It's just another pat on the back for them for bragging rights. Now, with all the issues that this tournament has, This is the most important tournament in the Splatoon community, bar none. This tournament is more important than Inkstorm 8, Riptide, Genesis, The Crown, whatever clan clash your clan is competing in this upcoming weekend. This is the most important tournament, and I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Don't tell this to anybody. Don't say you heard it from me. This tournament is not actually about finding the top team in North America. Well, I mean, obviously, because we already know which team is the top team in North America, so that's not important. This tournament is about finding new teams and introducing them to our chaotic, lovely Splatoon community. This tournament is about growing our scene. The last time we had this tournament, back in June, the May Low Inc. had 66 teams. The June Low Inc. had 118. They almost doubled the number of teams that signed up for their tournament. And it's not because Low Inc. switched to a 2-day system. It's not because they switched their groups, their Swiss from one giant Swiss group to 2. It's because it followed up immediately after the NA Open. And all of those teams that played in the NA Open that lost in the first round were like, well, this is cool. What else can we do? And then we were like, hey, here's Low Inc. Here's how, but more importantly than just bringing those teams in the Low Inc. and showing them a tournament, it's more so, hey, here's how you can go about finding free agents. Here's how you can find other teams that you can scrim against. Here is how you grow your team. And here's all the resources you need to do it. Those teams did not know any of these things existed until the last NA Open. So this NA Open is so important if you want to get this thing to grow. You want more teams to sign up in tournaments? Good. Do the NA Open this weekend and be a good ambassador. Not this weekend, this next month. Do you want more prize money in these other tournaments? Great. Sign up for the tournament, the NA Open, and be a good ambassador in it. Do you want the Splatoon community to be seen as an esport? Fantastic. It starts right here with this NA Open. And please, here's what I'm begging of you guys. When you play in the NA Open, if you're an established team, you're going to get fed casuals for the first few rounds. Don't go on Twitter and brag about how bad you beat them. No, nobody cares. You're not doing anything significant. You know how many Twitter clips I saw last time of these established teams, these top level players that were spawn camping the enemy team, which is fine. Don't get me wrong. If you're playing in a big boy tournament, no matter how good or bad you are, you're allowed to be spawn camped. I remember somebody in the last Low Inc., they weren't complaining, but they were just kind of like speaking out of frustration in general about being spawn camped. Well, suck it up, Buttercup. This is a tournament. Yes, it's not fun being spawn camped, but the other team's trying to win. They're going to do what they need to win. Now, it's one thing if you're spawn camping and you're not touching the objective. That's messed up. But if you're spawn camping while somebody else is actually pushing the objective, that's totally fine. Rant over with that. But please don't go off and brag about how cool you are for beating up on A ranks. That's not helping anybody. Nobody thinks you're awesome for that. We need to be good ambassadors. We need to play these teams. We need to say GG's. We need to be like, hey, are you guys new to the scene? Are you guys looking for other things to do? We need to direct them, not just the Low Inc., but we need to We need these teams to find Little Squidly. We need them to find the Ash Cup server. We need them to find about the Sindu.inc, where they can do all these. It's got all those resources they need to kind of game plan and build a team. We need to grow our scene in a positive way, and Nintendo is giving us an opportunity to do that. Let's take advantage of that, people. Please. Nintendo sucks at running their own tournaments. They really do. In fact, it's mostly us, the community, that's running it for them. But if you want your other tournaments, the actual tournaments we care about, to grow, the ones where people will donate prize money that is more than the value of the prize that Nintendo gives out for their tourney, support this one. It has a trickle-down effect, especially to the teams that listen to this podcast in the Div 8 to 5 category. This is the kind of tournament we want to grow everything. Also, thank you for the follow, Luke Skywalker, I believe, 120. I didn't realize there were that many Luke Skywalkers in the galaxy, but from what I know of you, I'm happy that there's at least one. Little Squid League 5 was this last weekend. It was a wonderful tournament. To give you a sense of what Little Squid League is, it is a tournament for teams in Div 8 through 5 only, or I should say divs in Team 5 and below only. Low Inc. used to be 5 and below only, but due to the addition of the X Plus division, it has now been extended to Div 4 and below. So if you're a fan of that old school Low Inc., what it used to be back in the day, then Little Squid Leagues is kind of an example of that. Only 16 teams registered, and that's a fine thing. No issue with that. Now, I'm not the TO of the tournament, so obviously I have no issue for that. I'm sure the people who ran Little Squid Leagues would like to see more teams sign up for it. But from my perspective, of someone who's trying to learn more about these teams, just having these 6 teams in there was awesome, because we got to see a lot of action from a lot of different teams. There was a lot of parity. There were a lot of upsets. There was some squid bagging. There was a new rivalry formed that I am announcing today. So many great things happened in this tournament. So many. And I'm going to spend the next, hopefully not more than an hour, explaining this whole tournament to you guys. Now, it was a group seeding tournament that led into a single elimination top cut, which is great. If you remember on the first episode of the Popcast, I kind of talked about how most of the lower level community tournaments are just Swiss, which is fine. I love Swiss personally. A tournament like Low Inc. pretty much has to do Swiss with the number of teams that they get. Maybe it'll grow to the point to where it would need to be like a speed ladder or something. But again, if you could just imagine teams doing the speed ladder for their first tournament, they're going to have no idea what the heck they're supposed to be doing. We have a hard enough time getting teams to do the Swiss stuff as well. But for a smaller tournament like Little Squid League, having a group stage was exciting to see. It can be tricky though, because with a group stage tournament, you have to do seeding, which has its hits and misses. In an open invite tournament, seeding usually isn't too difficult, because we've seen a lot of not just the teams that sign up for those tournaments, but we've seen a lot of the players in general. And a lot of those higher level players have Twitters that kind of list like everything they've accomplished and things like that. So it's easier to seed a tournament like that has established, well-known teams across the whole community. in a tournament like Little Squid Leagues, where everything's kind of limited, you don't have a lot of information to go off of. However, of the 16 teams that played in this past weekend's tournament, only 3 hadn't played in low ink in the past 3 months. So seeding for this one worked out really well. A lot of these teams were already established and have some data out there. So, and most of the groups kind of went down the way they were supposed to. There was only one real group where things kind of got thrown on their head. But for the most part, you saw mostly 3 O's, 2 1s, 1 2s, and 0 3s. I don't know if the teams that finished in those orders were supposed to finish that way based off the seeding or not, but you roughly, things just kind of worked out how you would assume they would in a group stage kind of tournament. So hello, Hohen, I see you down there. I forgot to bring water up here with me. Maybe my wife will bring me some if I DM her nicely. So let's look at the games that happened on stream. First one, round 1, Villain Academy versus Access Denied. I'm going to use low ink as a good parameter to kind of describe the skill level-ish of these teams. Because I feel like low ink kind of does a good job of kind of not like ranking teams, but giving everyone a kind of a perspective of where these teams kind of land in the grand scheme of things. So Access Denied finished tied for 5th in Gamma Bracket in the July low ink. However, they have since added a new player, or I don't know if this player was just a sub for them, or if there's someone that they've added on full time, but it is Violet from Radiance. Now, Radiance went 6-0 in Swiss in low ink in July and made it all the way to winter finals in Top Cut. So Violet is coming from a team that has tasted the fruit of success. And then you add that on to a team like Access Denied, or AD, a team that has been showing some improvement. If I can look over my notes from last time, I believe they're the team that started out in June going, no, they went 1-5 in June. Access Denied went 1-5 in June in low ink, and then has improved to 4-2 in July. And now they're adding in a player like Violet. That I'm excited to kind of see where Access Denied can kind of go from here. And it kind of showed in this first set against Villain Academy. The first 2 games were pretty much dominated by Access Denied. They won the first game in a KO. The second game, Villain Academy had someone DC, but it DC'd well after the point to where the game was already decided. So that ended in a victory for Access Denied as well. And they looked like a really well-run machine there. They had Shy, who I don't know if that's the same Shy that used to be on CIA. But Shy was playing really well with Tri-Slosher. Violet was doing extremely well with the Kensa 52 and busted out L3 at some points. Saucy Boy, I feel like Saucy Boy is someone somebody here knows. Was rocking with the anchor, and then Shinra on CDS. So they looked like a well-oiled machine, winning the first 2 games of this play all 3. When it came down to the third game, it got kind of interesting. It was Piranha Pit at Clam Blitz. In the Villain Academy, even though they already lost the set, busted out a C-Jet and a Vanilla Machine. So a double Stingray comp. And they just fired Stingray after Stingray after Stingray. Combined with 8 armors from their junior, they were able to completely shut down Access Denied. They ended up firing 12 Stingrays over the course of the game. It went 6 minutes before somebody scored, but Access Denied could not score once in 6 minutes, despite dominating the first couple of games in there. Villain Academy was able to score in the closing second, well, not the closing seconds, the first minute of overtime to take the win there. So that's stuff like that's kind of exciting to see. Access Denied was clearly the better team there, and really had no excuse not to win 3-0 against Villain Academy. But Villain Academy was able to bust out a comp that we don't really see too much in any kind of level. And I not mean like C-Jet and Vanilla Machine are things we don't see. But for the most part, when you look at the lower level community, you see a lot of non-meta weapon picks and comps that are completely different from what you would see from a higher level team. And for the longest time, I always thought it was just more of a comfort thing. The players are just comfortable with certain weapons, and they're just going to stick to it. A good example would be if you played in Low Ink, I guarantee you've come across at least 12 different teams that have an orange NZAP on their team. Orange NZAP seems to be the most comfortable weapon for anybody to use, period. Even though it is considered to be a quote unquote meme weapon. It does have a lot of uses, by the way. But the lower level community, especially with some of the other teams we're going to be talking about later in this tournament, it's not that they don't know what the meta is. It's that they're not afraid to try to experiment. A normal team wouldn't think to use Vanilla Machine, but Villain Academy thinks, you know what? We want another Stingray. I'm pretty good with Kensa Machine. What if I just use the Vanilla instead and see what happens? And it worked out. It won them a game that, in all honesty, they didn't have any business winning. And it's because they were willing to experiment with their comps a little bit. So hats off to Villain Academy for winning that game. But more importantly, hats off to Access Denied for winning the set. Round 2 on stream featured the Splatarians versus Eurobeats. This is an exciting matchup. Eurobeats is a team that's been around. I want to say they've been around for at least a year now. Splatarians, I know for a fact, have been around for over a year now because my team has played them in a tournaments. I keep track of everything my team does. We played them in tournaments dating back to 2019. So these are two well-established teams in the lower level community. It is nice to see them come out. Yeah, we played Splatarians in the Ludi seeding tournament on August of 2019. So they probably existed long before that, but wow, I guess we're just a week away from the anniversary of that game, or that tournament in general. The Splatarians versus Eurobeats. I would assume this isn't the first time their paths have crossed, and this was a fun one. Game 1 was Rainmaker at the Reef. And Eurobeats had a welcome to the world party for their Slayer, Hiya. It is spelled Hiyah. I believe it is pronounced Hiya. Hiya used Custom Blaster, which is something you're not supposed to be using anymore, and popped off game 1 with 21 KAs. 21 KAs in 4 minutes of action. Eurobeats was able to KO them largely behind the effort of Hiya in this tournament. Now, this isn't Splatarians, despite being an established team, is also pretty good. In Low Ink, they made the winners semifinals of the beta bracket. They beat Trinity. They beat Luau. which is the team that finished second in beta bracket. So Splatarians, it's not just an older team, but they're a team that knows how to win some of these games against some top level competition, which Luau is, in my opinion. So Eurobeat's coming out and having a player drop 21 KA. Now, the reason you don't use Blaster anymore is because of this double armor meta that we're in right now. You can't kill someone with a direct if they constantly have armor on top of them. We have seen armor used pretty well in the past. If you remember the Ash Cup about 4 weeks ago, Saxophone Ducks used a blaster with their comp when they played Supa. But the reason it worked against CP is because I think they're not aware that armor is a thing. They run armorless comps all the time. At least they did in that tournament that we saw. So blaster obviously worked. But Splatarians have adopted the double armor meta. They used double inzap. And it still didn't shut down Custom Blaster like it should have. Now, in Inzap versus a Blaster, specials forget about the specials. Just the weapon versus weapon, the Blaster is usually going to have an advantage there if they can land their directs. But the Splatarians did have a squeezer, which did outrange the Blaster, but you can't really win fights when all your teammates are constantly dead. So welcome to the world here. In that one, game 2 was much closer. Clam Blitz at Snapper Canal. The thing of note here is that the Splatarians Nightwing used in Vanilla L3. A Vanilla L3 is a weapon that is very high risk, high reward. The reward being that it adds a lot of paint and killing power to your comp with just one weapon, which it's hard to find a weapon that can do both. The risk being that it's extremely difficult to use, especially effectively. So it's a weapon you don't really see too much in the lower level community, just because the mechanical skill usually isn't there to kind of match it. But Nightwing used it really well and actually top fragged. And he still used Custom Blaster, but they were able to find a way to make bring them down from being immortal to just superhuman. I mean, still got 11 KA. The win did go to Eurobeats in that one. It was a close match, though. It was a much closer match. And then game 3 did go to Splatarians. They were able to KO its Skipper Pavilion Splat Zones. He did get 9 KA with CDS instead of Blaster this time around. I think the next person who top fragged for Eurobeats only had 2 kills or something. So most of Hia's kills came after their teammates had already died. So all the kills they were getting weren't really being able to translate into anything actually productive for the entire Eurobeats team. So Splatarians lose the set, but Lynn, once again, as we saw on stream, win the final game to make it a 1-2. In the final game we saw on stream, Splatter Swim versus CIA. Splatter Swim, being the team that won this entire tournament, being an older-ish, established team, performed pretty well in this entire tournament. This first game they played, though, in Swiss against CIA, was the only game they lost. I just said Swiss in groups. This was the only game they lost in groups. They played Clam Blitz at Mako Mart. Now, CIA is a newer-ish team, at least as far as I can tell. They've been around for a couple of months, but their roster has been shifting a little bit. It's made up of a lot of players from the Salty Sister clan, which is an all-female clan that's been around for a long time. I'd say, I don't know the exact dates, but at least longer than 3 years. Most notably in this tournament, they had Karma, a pretty solid anchor in the Splatoon community, a pretty experienced anchor as well, from the EU. But more importantly, for CIA in this first game, Herbert was kind of taking control of the game on Nautilus with 17 KA. This was kind of a back and forth game. CIA was able to take the lead late in overtime and hold on, despite the rare anchorless comp that Splatter Swim busted out. Game 2 was also kind of a close one. It was Rainmaker at Shipyard. We saw basically a completely different comp from what Splatter Swim used in Game 1 versus Game 2. I'm not going to read out the entire weapons that they were using, but as you listen to this, you're going to see this is kind of a trend about Splatter Swim. It seems like they use a weapon once, and regardless of how good or bad they do with it, they toss it in the trash can and pick out whatever weapon is next. But they were able to win the Rainmaker at Shipyard game. They got a lead early and was just able to hold map control for the remaining 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Worked out for them. And then in the decisive Game 3, Splatter Swim kind of woke up and realized, oh yeah, we should win this tournament today. And they just dominated tower control at Schellendorf, shutting down Herbert, who got 0 kills and 0 specials. So a good set overall. Every set that was on stream for the group stage ended in a 2-1 decision, which is great. That shows parity. Not all these sets were just 3-0s. And in fact, as you look at the group stage as a whole, there were not a lot of 3-0s. There were a lot of 2-1 victories, which shows that there's a lot of parity in a tournament like this, which is fun, which means every team that played in it likely had a good time, regardless of how well they actually finished up. There is one game to note that was not on stream, and that is Deep Fried Octolings versus Takedown. If you look into Deep Fried Octolings, they went 4-2 in low ink in July. However, one of those wins was because they had a bye, so in reality they went 3-2. One of the teams they beat was Evening Chickens, which is good. But the other teams were a little bit lower skill level that they did kind of beat there. So they did make beta bracket, and then they immediately lost. On day 2, they lost both games and got quickly eliminated from beta bracket. So Deep Fried Octolings, a team that shows that they can kind of win games, but they're not quite there yet to take that next step. Which makes absolutely no sense why they would beat a team like Takedown 3-0. Takedown was supposed to win this tournament. I'm sorry, Splatter Swim, but Takedown arguably has the better resume going into this tournament. I would assume that Takedown was the favorite to win this one. How did they lose to Deep Fried Octolings? And not just lose like 2-1. That means they didn't just like slip up in a Rainmaker game and then the other team rode that momentum to it. No, they won all 3 games. I genuinely want to see what happened here, because Takedown's a really good team. They played in the Booyah tournament, that Purdue tournament that's an open invite. I believe they finished in second place, taking 2 games off of Carnage Gaming. So, and I think they had a sub for that, so it's not totally accurate. But still, this is a huge win for Deep Fried Octolings. I don't know how they're able to pull it off, but that's a fantastic win for them. Possibly the best win of their career. Other winners from the group stage who didn't make top cut, but I think should still feel happy about the performance in this tournament. The Villain Academy. They didn't get 3-0'd. They were in that tough group with Access Denied, Deep Fried Octolings Takedown. They actually beat Deep Fried Octolings, who just beat Takedown 3-0. And nobody swept the Villain Academy. So that's a good win for them as a whole. And especially since they had a strong showing against Access Denied after being down 0-2 on stream. Game Over. Game Over took one game off of Geek Squids and Checkmate. Checkmate is the team that finished in second. Geek Squids is arguably the team that could have finished second. They had a very close match against Splatter Swim, which we'll get into next. So taking a game off of both those teams is good, as well as beating Booyah X 3-0. So nice showing for Game Over, even though they didn't make top cut. CIA, once again, went 1-2, the only team to take a game off of Splatter Swim in the group stage. And had a pretty good showing for the rest of the set against Splatter Swim as well, except for that last game. And lastly, a good shout out to our friends at the Hinsa clan. Praise the KOC. They went 1-2, taking games off of Eurobeats and the Splatarians, and beat the Wiggle Phantoms. Now that's an interesting name. 2-1. So shout outs to Kinsa Clan, a team that that has a cult following and didn't participate in the last Low Inc. So it was good to see them come out and play in that. So let's take a quick water break before moving on to the top cut. I've been talking for 40 minutes already. So I usually just like write down notes the day that I do these things. But like I never really picture in my head how long it actually takes for me to talk through all this stuff. So as I'm like going through and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to breeze right through it. And I look at the clock and I've been already going for 40 minutes. It's like, oh gosh. Let me start wrapping this up. Okay, let's get into the top cut. The first game, or the first match right off the set, was an absolute doozy of a match. It was Splatter Swim versus Geek Squids. So let me kind of preview this setup, or this matchup. So these two teams met in Low Inc in July. It was streamed during the Swiss stage. Splatter Swim Geek Squids won the first game of the best of three. Splatter Swim won the second game in an infamous game now because it is known as the Rainmaker Skipper Pavilion game, where Splatter Swim used triple Sploosh 7 and a Tri Nouveau, which was Splatter Swim's introduction to the world that they are absolutely crazy and insane. And they won with that kind of comp. Now, Game 3 is where the controversy kind of gets started. It was Clam Blitz at Muscle Forge Fitness. Geek Squids had the lead, and then their Tri-Slosher Bowen DCs at 2 minutes and 5 seconds. If they had waited 5 more seconds and then DC'd, then there would not have been a replay allowed. Instead, there was a replay allowed. Geek Squids win during the replay, and I would assume that rubbed Splatter Swim the wrong way with how that kind of ended. So now we got a rematch in the top cut just a few weeks later. Game 1, Splatter Swim wins Rainmaker at Anchovy. Splatter Swim winning Rainmaker games is going to be a theme throughout the rest of this tournament. Nothing really significant happened in this game. The KAs were all somewhat even. Splatter Swim just got a better push in Rainmaker. Nobody KO'd or anything. It was a fun Rainmaker match. Game 2 was at Splat Zones at Wahoo World. Now, Kid Crow, who normally uses Charger for Geek Squids, switched to... Oh no, was still using Splat Charger in this game. I'm thinking ahead. But Kid Crow absolutely dominated this game with Splat Charger, the Firefin, getting 12 KAs. And so Geek Squids was able to win this game. I also kind of want to point out, Kipu, the Splatling main for Splatter Swim, did get 16 KA in this game as well, with a Vanilla Hydra. Now, if you're somewhat familiar with Geek Squids, that's not a crazy thing. Vanilla Hydra is something Geek Squids has been known to use, and use very effectively. But that one was kind of the battle of the backliners there, and Kid Crow was able to get the better of Splatter Swim in that one. At this point, I think there were some lag issues that were brought up. But before that was kind of solved, they went on to Game 3 at Clam Blitz at the Reef. This one was heavily in the favor of Geek Squids again. Kipu used heavy deco. Geek Squids had an opportunity to KO. They had a huge push, and they had an opportunity to KO. But if you know anything about Clam Blitz at the Reef, it can be kind of difficult to throw power clams. If you don't throw it high enough or at a good enough slant upwards, it can get like rejected by the wall that's right underneath the basket. So Geek Squids had an opportunity to KO, missed a throw, and I allowed the game to continue. And Splatter Swim almost punished them for that. They had a huge... So it was 80 points to 16 points in favor of Geek Squids. The final score was 25 points remaining to 16 points. Okay, so basically... I think I kind of screwed up my notes there with the score. But basically, Splatter Swim scored a ton of points in the overtime push. And were a power clam throw away from taking lead. And I think they just jumped in a little too far behind the basket. And they jumped in with a power clam to throw, and the throw just didn't connect. But they almost stole one away from Geek Squids because they couldn't KO them earlier. Now here's where the interesting thing kind of took place. The stream takes a pause for about 15 minutes. And the entire tournament just pauses for about 15 minutes. Apparently, Kid Crow was lagging enough to the point to where the TOs decided they needed to pull that player out, and Geek Squids had to sub that player out. It was also, for whatever reason, Omega from Splatter Swim had to sit out as well. I guess because the Geek Squids were able to make an argument that Omega was lagging as well, but Omega got to play later on in this tournament, so I don't really know what the ruling was with that. If they just made him sit out for that set, or if they had to sit out the whole. Obviously, it wasn't to sit out the whole time. But basically, the TOs decided that due to lag, that one player from each team had to go out. Now, this isn't to say anything bad about Omega, but Kid Crow's value, losing Kid Crow, was more hurtful to Geek Squids than Splatter Swim losing Omega. Now, Omega's a great player, but Geek Squids were relying heavily on what Kid Crow was doing from the anchor position. Kid Crow was doing so many things that weren't just showing up on the stat sheet that allowed the rest of their team to do what they wanted to do. It's quite obvious that Geek Squids isn't comfortable running a comp without an anchor in their lineup. So basically, taking out Omega cut off an arm from Splatter Swim. Taking out Kid Crow took the heart out of Geek Squids. And it really showed, because when the game finally resumed again after about 15 minutes, we go to game 4. It was tower control at main stage. Splatter Swim just rode the tower all the way to the checkpoint. I think they got wiped once after clearing 2 checkpoints, but immediately hopped back on and got things going. The sub that the Geek Squids brought in couldn't really... It's not that they weren't effective. It's just that, one, they were obviously cold, because they had to be. Now, to be fair, Splatter Swim brought in somebody who was cold as well, so it worked kind of both ways. But Splatter Swim was still able to have the same kind of comp that they wanted to have versus Geek Squids, who looked totally uncomfortable. And then game 5 is when things... So the decisive game 5, and this is the best of 5. Splatter Swim gets a huge lead early with 20 points remaining. So they scored 80 points in their opening push. Somebody starts squid bagging on stream. I'm assuming that's a little something that happened behind the scenes in the lag chat that went on there. But that squid bag almost came back to haunt them, because Geek Squids did get a wipe. They did come back. They did take a lead late in this game before giving it up at the end to Splatter Swim. So Splatter Swim wins this match 3-2 in dramatic fashion, in a dramatic game 5. In honesty, I think Splatter Swim and Geek Squids is the new best rivalry in the lower level community. Now, how long are both these teams going to be in the quote-unquote level community? I don't know. Splatter Swim has won 2 tournaments to this point. Geek Squids has proven that they can play up to the level of anybody they play against, but also play down to the level of anybody that's below them. So both of these teams have shown potential to be really good teams. So I think we're going to see more of these guys in the future. And after what happened in this match, I wonder if any of that's going to kind of carry over to a rematch. Now, both these teams are wholesome, as far as I can tell. Geek Squids went on Twitter after this match and just said GG's to everybody. They really enjoyed their time in Little Squid League. Splatter Swim did the same thing at the end of their tournament. But what we need in the lower level community, we need more matchups like this. Like, the next time I see these two teams play each other, I'm going to be excited because I know the games are going to be good. I know there's a little bit of history behind it. It should be something that at least Geek Squids is going to be excited for, I think, to play these guys again. Which is fun. It's so much fun when you actually play against a team that you want to beat, as opposed to just playing against, well, this is the next team on our roster, and this is the next team that's in our way of winning a tournament. But no, this is a team. You remember what happened last time we played these guys? So I hope these guys play again, and I'm going to be excited to see it. But that was a really great set from both of those teams. Now, in the semifinals, the game that was on stream was Checkmate versus Access Denied. When I first saw the name Checkmate, I was confused because there was a team that played in Inkstorm 8 called Checkmate that had a Prin on it from Muso, formerly of Muso, and I think they beat Beastie Coys, or they at least won the first game that I saw on stream. I don't know if they straight up beat them. So I was like, How is this Div 2 level team playing in Little Squid League? But this is a completely different team that's also called Checkmate. I guess Checkmate's not that too obscure of a name that several teams would be called it. The last time we saw this version of Checkmate play was in Low Ink back in May. They dropped halfway through Swiss, and we haven't really seen them again, or at least I haven't really seen them again since then. The players on this Checkmate team are Case, Laluk, Meowsy, and I don't know how to pronounce this. Teint. I'm just going to call that Tent. I know that's wrong. That might be right, but the other thing I was going to say is Taint, and I don't really think that's the correct one. These guys just use the same comp over and over and over and over again. One player uses Forge and K-Pro. The other player uses K-Shot and T-Tech. But here's the interesting thing about Checkmate. They always run an N-Zap. But who uses the N-Zap is dependent upon what their anchor is going to be. They have one player, Tent, that uses nothing but Charger. Or not nothing, but uses Charger. And Meowsy uses Splatlings. So anytime those four play and they want to have a remix, then they'll just switch up who uses the N-Zap. Whoever's not anchoring will just use the N-Zap. And it's so interesting. You don't really see that too much. Most of the time, if you want to have a Charger and a Splatling, you just have one player use it. You don't have two players on your main roster that both pocket N-Zap and just switch off the anchor based off of whatever you want to do. It's cool seeing that kind of flexibility. And it didn't seem like one of them was a better N-Zap player over the other. So it was really cool to kind of see something like that. My team is kind of similar in that way. We do have one person who uses Charger specifically and another who uses Splatling specifically, but how we would rotate players is completely different from how Checkmate rotates players. I haven't really seen something like that before, and I thought it was pretty cool. Checkmate did beat Access Denied 3-0, but it wasn't like dominant fashion that you would think a 3-0 score would come with. That's why I hate this saying, looking at a score and be like, oh, they beat them 3, like Booyah or Deep Fried Octolings beat Takedown 3-0. Like, yeah, but you don't know what actually happened there. You don't know. It could have been 3 quick KOs. It could have been 3 overtime wins that the other team were losing, and that the one team just choked up 3 times in a row. It could be 3 DCs. It could be anything. So actually getting to see this set between Checkmate and Access Denied. The first game was Clan Blitz at Hotel. Both teams have good pushes. Access Denied was only down by 1 in the last few seconds. Checkmate was able to get a KO off the final push, but still a close game. Splat zones at Mako Mart. This one was a little more one-sided, but it was still not a KO. The final score was 99-59. And the last game, Tower Control at Shipyard. Checkmate won this one by 1 point, 64-63. Access Denied had the tower and got on it with 1 point left, needed to tie, and then one more to take lead. So they were already at the spot they needed to be to take the lead, and then the Booyah just came in to seal it. Despite Violet popping off with 17 KA with an L3. So a nice win there for Checkmate, but Access Denied, even though they lost 0-3, and Access Denied would go on to win the bronze medal match against Eurobeats and take 3rd place. Overall, this tournament's a really good showing for Access Denied. And should be a team to look for in the next Low Ink, possibly making the next top cut. especially if they keep this roster that they have for this tournament. But that will set up a matchup between Checkmate and Splatter Swim for grand finals, and I will get you that after a quick water break. Thank you, Brandeska. I agree. Staying hydrated is important. The alternative is dying. Death is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Drink your water. Checkmate. Checkmate versus Splatter Swim. This was a best of 7 grand finals. Thank you, Tofu. Yes, that is an appropriate use of your highlighted message, and I'm glad that people on YouTube have no idea what you're... I'm glad I haven't figured out how to add the chat to the overlay just yet. Checkmate versus Splatter Swim. These are two teams of completely different ideologies. Checkmate is a one-trick team. That's not to say they're a team of one tricks, but they are a one-trick team, meaning they know what comps they're going to use every single time. You know what comp they're going to use every single time, and they don't care. They're basically saying, they're basically showing you their playbook and telling you to stop it. And up to this point, nobody was able to stop them. Checkmate, coming into grand finals, was, I believe, 18-1. I screwed up my notes somewhere here. They were 14-1. Splatter Swim was 14-3 coming into this grand finals. Now, Splatter Swim, on the other hand, is a team that I am convinced doesn't know what weapons they are going to be using until the timer actually stops on the ready up screen. These guys use so many different weapons. Kipu used every single anchor splatling available in the game in this tournament. Both ballpoints, both hydras, all 3 heavies. Even used a mini at one point. Kipu used everything. So there's no way of really telling which one he's going to bust out. Omega, I am convinced that Omega, it feels like there is some sort of bad luck associated with using the same weapon twice in the tournament. Yeah, I don't have the patience to go back through this, but if I were to look through this tournament again, I would be willing to bet that Omega used 10 to 12 different weapons throughout this entire tournament. The list pool is insane with Splatter Swim. Again, this is the same team that used triple sploosh tri-slosher on a Rainmaker game and won. A Rainmaker game that they were currently losing the set in. They went into that game down 0-1 and decided to use triple sploosh. These guys are crazy. So it's 2 different ideologies there. The team that's going to show you everything they're going to do, and the team that you have no idea to predict what they're going to do. So this is a great matchup between these 2 teams. In the first game that these 2 teams played was Tower Control at main stage. Easily the best game of the entire tournament. Possibly the best Tower Control game I've ever seen. It was roughly even. Both teams were having issues trying to clear the second checkpoint. towards the end of the game, Checkmate finally cleared it with about 5 seconds left to go before getting wiped. Splatter Swim takes control of the tower, and they have to ride the tower. Since it's in overtime, they have to stay on the tower all the way as it rides back to mid, mind you. And they still hadn't cleared the second checkpoint. But Splatter Swim was able to get a wipe with only losing 2 players, and they're coasting through the second checkpoint, and it looks like they're going to steal this game. Out of left field comes the K-Shot Case and kills both players that are on the tower. However, died as well. So 2 players from Splatter Swim jump in on the tower, and they land on it just enough to clear the second checkpoint. And as they're approaching to take the lead, the first player to respond for Checkmate, LaLuke, on the Splattershot Pro Forge, hops on the tower, gets 1 pick, and then has to kill the second person, and is able to do so with 1 point remaining. And before another Splatter Swim player lands on the tower, Checkmate officially takes control of it. There is nothing more exciting in Splatoon, in my opinion, than an overtime 1v1 battle on the tower where whoever wins that 1v1 wins the entire game for their team. And that's exactly what happened here in the first game of Grand Finals against these 2 teams with clashing ideologies. And it goes to Checkmate. Absolutely fantastic game. The stream is still up for this tournament. I would recommend you go watch that game for sure. And then game 2 came around, and we follow up that epic game with Rainmaker at Black Belly. Checkmate gets wiped. Splatter Swim has all 4 of their specials. Checkmate respawns with no specials. Splatter Swim KOs them in the first minute. It was completely drained all the hype from the first game from a viewer perspective. You know, Rainmaker, it's not the best mode of the 4. It's not. You can't use the excuse, though, when you lose a game. It's like, oh, well, we just lost Rainmaker. It's fine. That mode sucks. Like, no, it obviously wasn't an issue for Splatter Swim. Splatter Swim did not lose a single game of Rainmaker the entire tournament. They obviously see some value in how Rainmaker is supposed to be played. So if you're a team that you like, you know, we're really good at everything but Rainmaker, and you're just fine with getting KO'd in Rainmaker in 30 seconds because it's just Rainmaker, you got to look at it differently, because winning these Rainmaker games is what won Splatter Swim this entire tournament. Game 3 was Splat Zones at Wahoo World. Checkmate was able to win this one by KO. The main interesting thing here is that Meowsy from Checkmate used custom Hydra and was able to get 13 KA. Kipu used a vanilla Hydra and got 3 KA. Now, the reason the KAs were so different were not because of the comps. I can understand how vanilla Hydra can work on a map like that. The ideology is, and you saw Kipu doing this a lot, was splashdown in Wahoo World will instantly stall the zone, right? So you saw a lot of jumping splashdowns with the Hydra that would stall the zone. The issue was, after you land a splashdown with Hydra, you're dead. It takes you way too long to rev up an opportunity for you to defend yourself, and Meowsy just kind of ate up Checkmate there. Splatter Swim. So Splatter Swim went down 1-2. And then the next game was Clam Blitz at Piranha Pit. Splatter Swim was able to get a huge lead halfway through the game. 32 points remaining. And at this point, I didn't watch this one live. I was driving home after the first round of Top Cut. But I knew that Splatter Swim won the whole tournament. And I didn't get around to watching Top Cut until last night before I went to bed, or Grand Finals. And as I was watching Checkmate take this lead, this huge lead in the Clan Blitz game at Piranha Pit, my thought was, did I read that long? Did Splatter Swim actually win this tournament? Because it looks like Checkmate's pretty much beating their butts right now. I mean, they beat them on the Rainmaker game, but I mean, it's just Rainmaker, right? So it's interesting. It looked like at that point when Checkmate went up that big after already being up 2-1 in the set, it looked like Checkmate was just going to run away with this one. But no, Splatter Swim actually comes back and in 2 pushes is able to KO and come back and steal that win there and tied it up at 2-2. Next game, Rainmaker and Manta Maria. This one wasn't a KO, but Splatter Swim dominated and used their Rainmaker expertise. They basically just got a big lead and was able to just hold on to the middle of the map. Checkmate couldn't do anything that entire 5 minutes. And Cannon or Kanan, either or, I don't know how to pronounce that, got a sexy quad to finish it off with a Kinsa brush, including a nice hammer yeet in the middle of that. And the last game, Tower Control at Anchovy. Here's a weird thing that's got interesting for Checkmate. They've had the same 4 players this entire time. Same comp too, like I said. Splattershot Pro, Splattershot, Inzap, and then either a Splatling or Stingray, or a Charger. They decided now, with one game, if they lose one more game, they're done. They decide now to sub somebody out. They subbed out their Splattershot Pro, who was using K-Pro that last game, and brought in a new player, Lynx. And that was interesting, and I liked that because I thought, okay, they're going to do something completely different. They're going to switch up something. They brought out one of their top slayers, but the sub they brought in was another Inzap main. They used the Inzap and they moved Meowsy to Kinsa Machine. So that the machine was the real switch there, not the new player coming in. So they still kept basically the same kind of comp that they had. And I don't know. It's interesting. I like the idea of, okay, our backs are against the wall. Let's try something new. We've lost these last 2 games. Let's try something new. Let's try to shake up Splatter Swim a little bit and bring out a different kind of comp. But you brought in a player that uses Inzap, the same weapon that your other 2 players were already using that were in the lineup. It was, I don't know if that was the right move or not. I wonder if that's a move that Checkmate is going back and kind of considering now. Well, I mean, it's easy to consider now considering they lost. Lynx did all right, though. The game actually started with Lynx getting a quad with the Inzap. So Lynx didn't come in cold at all. It came out and just got a quick quad immediately against Splatter Swim. But then Splatter Swim respawned, and then it was over at that point. They just kind of took control. I think the Inzap got one more kill after that, but it was completely over at that point. So Splatter Swim, Cannon, there we go. Cannon makes, it's Cannon. It's Cannon, guys. Cannon works out so much better. Oh, wait a minute. Ka-na-un. See, pronunciations is just going to make me worse. Hey, 3 people said it's Cannon, so we're going to have to go with that. So there you go. Splatter Swim wins this whole tournament. This is their second tournament win that at least I'm aware of. They won the Xanadu tournament. So now the real question is, I'm assuming that's not pronounced Cannon. Okay. Kanan. Now, the real question with Splatter Swim is, what can they do in low ink? They've already established that they can win these other tournaments that are in like this scope that we talk about here. They've won the Xanadu tournament. They just won Little Squid Leagues. But now, can they really step up in this tournament that lets in the Div 4 teams? They've shown the ability to do so. And you know what? This is the kind of tournament where after you saw what Takedown kind of did, how they just kind of fell apart there, it's just probably just had a bad day in general. This was Splatter Swim's tournament to win. So if they didn't win this tournament, I would assume they wouldn't be satisfied. So they did what they were supposed to do. They came out and they won this tournament. Now, can they get back to Top Cut in Low Ink? They've been in Top Cut before. And they've done some damage in Top Cut before because I remember streaming them in that. So the question is now, especially now that they've won beta bracket in the past, can they finally get back to Top Cut and start being a contender for that? And hopefully, in my opinion, they can take the momentum off of this and do so. But still, every other team that participated in this tournament, especially Checkmate, I hope we see those guys stick around some more. Don't disappear for 3 more months. Eurobeats finishing in 4th place. That's a big step up for them. Access Denied. These guys are getting better every single month. I would not be surprised if they made Top Cut next Low Ink. Villain Academy, Deep Fried Octolings, Game Over, CIA, Kinsa Clan, all made big step ups in this tournament, even if they didn't make it to Top Cut. So a lot of teams trending upward here. I don't know what to make of the Takedown situation. I'm not going to speculate on it. I'm not going to say anything negative because I didn't watch any of the games. But Takedown, probably, I'm just going to give them the reason of the benefit of the doubt that it's had a bad day. You tear yourself down. They'll play in the next Low Ink and try to turn it around. And that was a lot more talking than what I was expecting to do for this, but there you go. I just talked an hour and 15 minutes for a tournament that only had 16 teams in it. But it was a really good tournament. And again, the VOD is still up. If you are a fan of Splatoon in general, I recommend you watch it. It is the Little Squid League Twitch. If you just type in Little Squid League on the search bar, I'm sure you should be able to find it. But that's enough talking for me. That is way too much talking for me. Hey! This is going to be it for the podcast today. This upcoming weekend is the Xanadu Tournament Series. I believe Splatter Swim signed up for that, so we'll see if they can repeat as champions in that. I would recommend you do that as well. I don't have a link to that specifically, but if you go to the Xanadu Discord server or just search Xanadu on Twitter, you should be able to find some information about that upcoming tournament. If you would like to be a part of this Popcast in any way, I have done interviews of players in the past. Most notably the West Broadway Grillers and Bread Gang up to this point. And I have had other people reach out to me who wanted to be a part of this. So I do have people backlogged that I do kind of want to get in at some point. But I want to make sure that it makes sense for the time to bring them in. But if you would want to be a part of this in any way, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at Mr_Popgun, Discord at Popgun, hashtag 5882, YouTube at 25Popgun, Twitch at Popgun25. I have way too many social media nonsense to keep track of now. And that is it. We're going to find somebody to raid. If you're watching this on YouTube, we'll try to do better next time as far as overlay and all that stuff. We are going to send you guys to Magic 8 Ball, who I believe is hosting some sort of roundtable discussing stuff. So if you want to hear more people talking, go check him out. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Once again, if you're going to wear a mask, make sure you put it over your nose, you mouth breathers.